Okay, cool. Hello, guys. This is episode 12 of Web3 Unleashed. For those of you who don't know, I'm Emily, developer advocate at Truffle, and today we have Natter here with us to talk about Lens. I guess just gonna jump right into it. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Nader. I'm the director of developer relations at Aave companies, including Lens. I've been a developer for a little over 10 years. I've been in the education kind of space for 8 of those years. And yeah, just excited to be here to talk about all the stuff that I really love.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. I'm really excited. Um, just for those of you who don't know, just fangirling right now, Natter's kind of my entry point into Web3. So part one, we're just going to talk about decentralized social. What is Lens? Part two, I created a truffle lens box to play around with. Natter will be here, I guess, to tell me everything that I did incorrectly, and we can learn together. So, first off, let's actually just talk about the decentralized social landscape in general. What is it and why should we care?
Yeah, totally. There's a lot to talk about, and I will kind of try to speak to maybe some of the stuff that is maybe the most relevant to people listening, and also that I'm personally excited about. Yeah, so where do I start? I mean, I think that when we think about some of the challenges for adoption of some of these technologies, a lot of it has to do with UX, security, and scalability, maybe. Um, we understand that there are a lot of really powerful things that can be enabled through some of these technologies. But in reality, in practice, for the average person in the world, I think that the only thing that really clicks for them that even truly might provide a better value proposition than would exist today, at least, is through digital payments. I think that it's a very simple kind of explanation when someone can say, "Hey, I can send you money, and you live in a different country, and all I need is this address, and you can have it to them in a few seconds." I'm currently going through a challenge right now where I hired a consultant. They live in the UK. They gave me their invoice, and I was supposed to pay them through a bank transfer. I couldn't send the bank transfer for some reason. He then opened up or did something different with like a different account. A few days later, I got that information. I tried to send him the money, wasn't able to send him the money. Here we are, like 10 or 11 days later. And crypto is like a 10x or more improvement for that. So I think that that's a very simple thing for people to understand when they have gone through those challenges of sending global payments, or maybe they live in a place or they're from a situation where they can't even open a bank account. Maybe they live in one of the countries where you can't open a bank account if you're a woman, or
Wait,
maybe there's
Natter,
some
can
other
I
things.
interject right now? I don't know if you heard my question. I asked about decentralized social media.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yes,
okay,
I
okay,
know.
cool. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
oh, are we going into like
I know.
decentralization in general?
I'm going off on a
I'm so
little
sorry.
tangent
I'm so sorry. Okay, please continue.
because, like, I think it's useful to kind of underscore how great some of these
Mm,
technologies are and
yeah.
how valuable they are and how kind of a lot of the stuff that's been built is actually not really providing much value for the average person. So that is a very, very simple thing that people understand, and it really is powerful. If you look at a lot of the stuff that's come out of the last year and a half, the hype, what you might call like the hype cycle, a lot of it's been really only built for each other. Like for us, that it's in the crypto space. Like we'll build a DAO, and then we'll build a bunch of DAO tooling, and then we'll build a bunch of like interoperability for NFTs within a DAO and token gating and stuff. Um, the average person just doesn't care about DAOs. The average person doesn't care about NFTs. The average person doesn't care. When I say average, I'm talking about like literally the average. There are obviously people that do care about this stuff, but I'm saying like the average person in the world doesn't care about DeFi. Um, so therefore, it's been not only challenging to kind of explain some of these ideas, but the UX for them to actually use this stuff is equally as bad or actually way worse. And for decentralized social, I think it's solving a lot of the challenges, or it's bringing an actual use case that is a lot easier for people to understand, and build. And depending on how you build this, it also provides a much better user experience than anything we've really kind of seen before in the blockchain space. So going back to UX, let's talk about what the average person has to go through to use a blockchain application. Well, if the user is used to using something like Twitter, they can just like click on a button, or any other app, for example, that's like quote unquote Web2. They might just click on Google, sign in with Google, and then they have an account and they can start using it, right? Very, very simple and straightforward. With blockchain applications, they might come upon an application and be like, oh, that's pretty cool. I want to use it. Okay. Like, this is what you have to do. You first have to go and open a centralized exchange account. And you might have to go through a week process to kind of KYC and all of that, connect your bank account. Then you have to send payment from your account to that account. And then you have to kind of take those tokens or whatever you bought there and then send them to a wallet. And you have to actually understand how that wallet works. So therefore, you need to understand seed phrases and private keys. You also have to understand which network you're on and make sure that the network that you're on, the tokens that you're sending are both proper. And then you have to kind of send the money from that centralized exchange to that account. And then to start using the app, you have to start paying for the transactions. Um, so for the average person in the world, not only is this just a really bad experience, it's actually impossible for them to do. Or very inaccessible. Like, most people just don't have money to throw around to spend on this stuff, and most of them will not go through all of this headache to use your app. So when people are like, "Oh, we're going to build the next thing that's going to onboard a billion users," it's kind of just meaningless at this point. I actually don't really take anything seriously in Web3 anymore. That is just marketing or speak. I actually have to see the product that they're building, or maybe understand the founders and their background to kind of trust what they're saying. Because at this point, there's so much hype that's out there. It's all become just kind of everyone's overselling everything that they're doing, and it's kind of really made, I think, a lot of people lose trust, like in Web3 and blockchain stuff. And therefore, like, we need actual products that people are interested in, that work, that do what they say they do. And I know I'm still kind of going off track here a little bit, but I'm hoping it will like end up underscoring my point. Um, being in the space for about a year and a half, when Lens Protocol came out, I has had been working at the Graph Protocol for most of my, or actually the entire time I've been in the blockchain space, and I just changed positions to go work at a company called Celestia. But I tried to kind of use Lens Protocol, and I built a quick application with it. It was pretty cool. I really liked it, so I decided to create a tutorial on it. I put the video out there. A lot of people ended up picking it up, and one of the things that I really noticed about building with it was that it kind of made just a lot of sense to me for like coming into it, not having anything to do with like blockchain or Web3. It was just a really cool application. So when the question of like what is like Web3 social and stuff like that comes in, I think that one of the main things that I would point out is that there are already 4.85 billion people in the world and that are using social media applications, and having something that is already understood by the average person is a very compelling like go to market, first of all, because you don't have to explain all of the things like that might be a lot different with DAOs or NFTs or anything like that. So someone like that might not be that interested in something like that is a new concept. They understand kind of an existing concept. But that doesn't make Web3 social that much better or different than traditional social. Just it being social like doesn't mean a whole lot. I think where Web3 social actually brings a better value proposition comes in kind of two different ways. I think one from the user perspective and one from the developer perspective. From the user perspective, when I kind of go on Twitter and I say something or I do something, I don't know what the ramifications or the repercussions of that are going to be. I don't really say anything that's that inflammatory, like ever, but I do talk about Lens, for example, sometimes. And Elon Musk came on Twitter a couple months ago and said, if you share or you kind of try to, I would say, advertise other social networks, then we can ban your account. Like, that was kind of crazy to me that someone could just ban my account because I was like doing something that I've been doing forever. If you live in the wrong country, for example, like for instance, if you live in a country where the government is very tightly controlled and doesn't want any like counteractive arguments like coming out, then people will also ban your account. So like one use case for the average person that really resonates is that you can just create an account and never have to worry about it being deleted. So that's one very powerful thing. It's a very comforting thing to know that it's there. But even more importantly is that when a new social media application comes online, the average person has to start from scratch building up their following. And when TikTok came out, for example, if you already had like a million followers on YouTube, you had to actually start from zero on TikTok. With Web3 social, with these decentralized social graphs, every new application that comes online that's built on that protocol, you automatically have those followers built in. So as the ecosystem grows, it's like this snowball effect. More people want to build and more people want to use it because there's already a built-in, user base. So if I kind of get 10,000 followers on Lens, when that new app comes out on Lens, I automatically have those followers. And that value proposition of kind of having that built-in user base for the user also is really great for the developer. And I want to talk more about the developer stuff next, but that's kind of my quick intro. And I kind of like bounce around to a whole bunch of different areas, but maybe we can dive into some of that a little more.
Yeah, yeah, I just wanna say that was it was long, but I think it really inspired, like, a few things that I super resonated with. I think first when you were talking about, like, banking, and then diving into social, that's very much my entry point into why I got into Web3, was, like, DeFi was really cool, there's a really strong use case. When NFTs came out, I was like, "This is how we're gonna unlock Web3 for, like, my mother," because she can understand that, right? And then the second part when you're talking about UX, so I work for Truffle at Consensus who owns MetaMask, right? And we always call ourselves the gateway to Web3, but I think you bringing up Lens kind of being that intermediary between not just like your seed phrase and everything, but like, you're the true gateway, I guess, for, like I'm gonna keep talking about Web2 users as my mother. But basically yeah, so, like, MetaMask is my gateway, but, like, Web3 social, like, this interaction, through the Lens handle, I definitely see, kind of that new use case, and I was really excited to bring you on too, I think, because, I'm on a stream, I actually have my own newsletter, that will be secret forever. Um, but, something I have always really thought about was, like, what if I lose my data? These are, like I write essays, and they're very personal to me, and, like, having ownership of that information, like, not just, like, NFTs, I think we talk about digital art ownership, transferring into things like followers, as you mentioned, like, my, social graph, the content I produce is a really strong use case, I think, for the creators, and I really like how you said even, like, as a user, the information that I consume, I get to follow the people I love and care about and have their information persisted, is really awesome. I kinda wanted to talk about, I think decentralized social is a really strong, use case for onboarding people. Something that I often get pushback on, I think, when I talk to other people is kind of from 2 angles, right? So, I wanna first talk about kind of what your thoughts are on from, I guess, the business side, right? So, do you see kind of the Web3 social landscape more so being new ventures popping up versus currently existing social media companies to kind of decentralize or Web3ify their own, um, like, content in a sense, right? Because the way I perceive social media right now, let's say, like, the migration from Instagram over to TikTok is all about protecting that creator content, right? And Web3, I love it, kind of removes that walled garden. Um, so where do you kind of see that narrative or competitive edge being lost, but being recreated in a different way? Um,
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. The main thing I might just outline is that at first it's definitely going to be more of newcomers that are kind of just getting started, or maybe they want to build their audience and they've been unsuccessful in traditional ways. So I think one of the great things that we've seen so far with Lens is that people have like a 10x engagement from what they do on Twitter or other social media apps. So, for instance, if someone posts on Twitter and they have 1,000 followers, they'll get 10 times more interactions with the same number of followers on one of these Lens applications, and that has been a big incentive for new creators. And we've had people that have built much larger following just in a few months in a beta product with a closed, entry point than they have on other applications. So I think that we'll have mostly kind of new people coming in or people that haven't built big followings. And that's been kind of really what we've seen so far. We've had a few large names come in, like a few celebrities and stuff, like the lead singer of Linkin Park is one that I think is one of the most famous ones that's come in and had started interacting. But what we've also noticed is that as people are gaining momentum and more people are coming on, other people take notice and they want to kind of just have a profile there and get started just in case. And so it kind of starts spreading, kind of organically and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. We still are fairly early in the sense that it's still a permission protocol. So in order to use it, you have to kind of get on a wait list or an allow list. And I think once we make it permissionless, we will truly kind of see the scale and the growth of what it could look like.
Yeah. And then I think the second piece I was hoping you can answer in terms of more so answering for me when people push back. So I'm just going for you as the source is like you said, a lot of the people coming on are new, right? And I think my experience with Web3 social apps, I love them, but are also like full of like, I guess you could say Web3 natives, right? So
Yeah, totally.
when you're attracted to an app, for example, it's because the content is cool. Referring back to my mother as the canonical user, she's on the Facebook, you know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
I don't see her joining, for example, like Lenster to well, I mean, she might just to watch my content 'cause she's my mother. So maybe like random person who doesn't know who
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
am. Right, yeah. Where's the how do you see like that kind of changing? Or maybe is Lens doing something specifically in terms of like creator incentives?
Yeah, we have a couple of things that would attract people, and I think one of them is that we are going to be implementing a sign up mechanism that will enable anyone in the world to just sign up without having to have any crypto or any wallet or anything. And one of the things that I was mentioning about traditional applications in Web3 and blockchain was that onboarding process was very, very like I don't even know the word to use, but it's kind of whatever word would be like terrible, like beyond that. Um, because of all those things you have to go through. But with Lens and really with a few handful of other, what I would call the higher quality or the people that are trying to kind of actually, truly build accessible applications, we're able to actually, I would say, kind of like subsidize the transaction costs because we're now in a point in time where we have networks that are cheap and getting cheaper, and they're very fast and performant. And we can start treating this blockchain infrastructure like AWS treats their own web infrastructure when people build on AWS. So if I use Instagram or Twitter or one of these other apps, the transactions that are happening under the hood are actually costing money, but it's so cheap that we obviously don't have to pay to use Twitter because the infrastructure is being subsidized by the application. And with these low cost protocols where transaction costs are less than 1 cent, we can now start doing that and it's going to get cheaper and cheaper. So with Lens, we do that and you don't have to pay for any transactions. So all you need right now is a wallet. But in the future, we will be also kind of abstracting that away. So you'll be able to go sign up for an account and start using the app. No signing or paying for transactions or anything. It just feels like a natural application. So that will be a much more accessible thing, period, for anyone. And then once, but still, why would someone want to use this versus something like Twitter where they've already kind of built up an audience? Well, there's a couple of things that I already mentioned, kind of the portability of the social graph and the censorship resistance, or the just being able to go to sleep at night knowing the next morning your account isn't going to be deleted. But we have a lot of stuff that is enabled by blockchains that just literally isn't possible through other types of infrastructure. So one of those is just built-in native payments. So I can attach a payment to one of my like quote unquote tweets, and in order for someone to collect that, and they will have to pay whatever, or they would have to have kind of gone through whatever mechanism I put into that tweet or whatever to make that a lot more clear. Like in an actual use case, someone sent out a message on Lens a few months ago saying that they were quitting their job to go full time building a Lens client, and they set a $2 collect fee. I think it was like 2 Matic, and they had 10,000 people that collected. He made $20,000 just like that. You can't do that on other social platforms. And the cool thing about that is that money literally goes directly into his wallet. Every time someone clicks a button, he's making $2, $2, $2. Because the payments are natively built into the platform, it's possible with blockchains. It just isn't possible with anything else. So in the 10 seconds, or not 10 seconds, maybe 1 minute it took for him to write that tweet, he made $20,000. Not saying that that's a normal amount for someone to make, but that's really compelling and cool that someone can just do that, and it's that simple. Another thing is that, I would like to talk more about how the developer like experience and really the nature of how it is to build on Lens just spurs a lot more innovation, because it's such a lower barrier to entry to build an application, that we're just going to see a lot more experimentation on the front ends. And I think that with more experimentation and more options, becomes there becomes more likely an application that might be compelling for someone who doesn't really that isn't really compelled to maybe use some of these other apps that are out there, because they can be more niche and a lot more exciting for like maybe a smaller group to get started. So when you want to build an application to compete with something like Twitter or TikTok, it's actually a very, very heavy lift, because you have to hire and build out your front end team, which is typically a web team, an iOS team, and an Android team. And you also have to build out an infrastructure team, which is typically a back end engineering teams, DevOps, QA, and all this other stuff. Um, and you have to kind of continue building and maintaining that backend infrastructure forever, or whatever. With Lens, you could almost look at it like how serverless technologies, like all the different ones at AWS, like Lambda and Cognito, and also something maybe like Twilio is a good example of a serverless managed service. You don't actually have to build or maintain any of that infrastructure. It's kind of already there for you. You could just start plugging into it. And that's what Lens does, but for social applications. So if you want to build a social feature into your app, or you just want to build a social network, you don't actually have to build or hire or do anything on the back end. The back end's already there for you. You start just using it. And not only do you not have to build all that back end, but you also have that built-in user base of 100,000 plus users today. In the future, that will be millions of users. So it's a big value proposition for me as a developer to spend a weekend toying with a new project and launching it and just testing it out. So, one of the biggest things that you see with developer ecosystems is really trying to spur experimentation. And I think that with the low barrier to entry to building on Lens, you're going to see a lot more experimentation, and therefore a lot more different types of applications. And then therefore, hopefully, more people that are compelled to use some of these more kind of niche applications.
Yeah, awesome. I guess this is probably a good jumping point into kind of lens building. I do want to talk about, your API. I was playing around with it. It is so easy to use. I was on this panel in Lisbon with I forgot who, one of the developer advocates at Lens, but we were talking about the future of like Web3 tooling. And I was like, to really, I think, move this forward is things like Lens API or these NFT APIs that are coming out to basically, I would say, like, make my job obsolete. I focus on smart contracts, right? But like the API abstracting away all of that interaction for just like Web2 JavaScript developers to come in and build is like key. So it's like one level, like I want to keep my job. Another level, like what you guys are doing is really important and really cool. So like let's actually start to talk about Lens. Like, what is Lens? You've kind of talked about how people have been more empowered like through the API. Maybe, well, okay, I guess we keep talking about Lens, so let's just actually just say what it is, because not necessarily everyone knows yet.
Yeah. So, like, what is Lens?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that Lens is a API protocol and toolkit for building social applications or social features within applications.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And then I guess maybe just, if you have any fun Easter eggs or, like, history of Lens, how did we get here?
Yeah, I think that there was a conversation that was happening around the time that Jack Dorsey was exiting Twitter. That
Mm,
was happening on Twitter, and Jack was saying, "Oh, like, I wish I'd done this, and I wish I'd done that." And also, Web3 at the time was like really in the top of the hype cycle. And Stanley just tweeted out, "We're going to build a decentralized like Twitter or decentralized social." And at the time, I don't think anyone really thought too much of it, because in Web3, people tweet shit all the time, and then 99% of the time don't deliver on it. They just say stuff. So it was cool to see like a year later they had actually stopped and buckled down and hired a team and researched and built and like really thought deeply about solving this problem and shipped a product like a year later. So they, it started with the conversation on Twitter. They actually did the work and they thought out really deeply. And I think that one of the main successes, um, yeah, definitely one of, if not the main success of Lens so far has been really the fact that we just have a really strong engineering team led by this person named Josh. And there's been so many times that we've run into challenges or had questions that 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 in my head I didn't know what the answer would be, that he's come up with a really quality innovative solution for it and actually shipped that solution fairly quickly. Happened over and over. So I think like us having the team that they have has been really important, and they've taken into consideration a lot of the things that really have been stumbling blocks for almost everyone else. So one of those things is kind of the user experience and developer experience. So really one of the first apps used at scale that is free to use, that doesn't require anyone to kind of have tokens. Really one of the first apps that I've ever used, or maybe for sure the first app I've ever used that doesn't require signatures for every action. So you sign this dispatcher and it kind of approves these non-financial transactions that happen from then on. So if I post a tweet or I share an image or I comment or I retweet or something like that from any Lens app, I don't have to sign a transaction. So my interaction on any Lens app just feels like I'm using Twitter. So I think that that's been really one of the things that people always talk about is how the UX just feels very natural and good.
Yeah, that's wild. So let's actually just dive into, I guess we're at the halfway mark. So let's talk about for those building on Lens. Um, Lay of the land, what are the building blocks? There's like major concepts like profiles, mirroring, governance. If you had
Yeah.
um
Okay. So
this
yeah,
is wide. It's a broad question.
to get started, yeah, like I would probably just go to the docs and really just check out the APIs and the quick start guides and the SDKs and stuff. But really, when you think of the different social media applications out there today, you might be like, wow, like these things are so complicated, and they are. These applications sometimes have thousands or tens of thousands of people like working on them, but the actual primitives and the building blocks are very consistently the same actually across every application. And also when you think about the web too, you can almost categorize every single page that you see on the web into one of a few different categories with obviously some caveats like some exceptions. But their profile, I mean, I'm sorry, their list views, their detailed views, and their forums. So when I go to Google, I have a forum and I type in a phrase, and then I have a list view. The list view is just a bunch of results. When I go to Facebook, I have a list of things that happen. I click on one of those things, and then I see a detail of that. When I go to Instagram, I see a list of things. When I click on my profile, I see a list of pictures, and I click on my followers. Anyway, you get where I'm going with this. So essentially, the web is kind of made up of these same exact things that happen over and over. And also, social applications are really the same. Every social application, with some caveat, pretty much has the same thing going on. You have a profile where you kind of create your information about you. You have a publication of some type that could be a video or it could be a post. You have comments. You have a list of profiles that you can see sometimes. So, for instance, if I look at my own profiles, so like with these things in mind, we can create views and APIs on top of data to kind of expose this stuff, so developers can just easily take this data and build out their own user interfaces. So the API that Lens provides is built on top of the Polygon smart contract. So we have the protocol, all those transactions are flowing through there, but we built out this API that indexes all the information into a database and exposes a GraphQL API on top of it. And the biggest problem with reading blockchain data is that you don't really have a way to read it like a traditional database. Like a traditional database, you can actually say, okay, give me the users that have signed up in the last 24 hours, that letter starts with the letter H, that are from Arizona, that are age 21 and older, that are male. Like you can ask for these really complex queries, and databases will return that information immediately, and it's really simple to use once you understand it. And most applications that we use today are built on databases, but blockchains for actually are very, very much more challenging to expose that data on top of it, because in a smart contract you just have these transactions that happen, and in order to get the current state of the contract you often have to recreate the entire history of the chain, take all the information, index it in yourself into a database, and do all this work. So our API just literally just does that for you, and we give you all these really rich querying capabilities on top of it. So you can say, give me the profiles that have this name, or like that are doing this, or give me the publications that have this word in them that are posted from this app. You have like a really rich set of querying capabilities. So to get that data, it's pretty simple. And we've also built a couple of SDKs in the last month or two that we're going to continue improving on, and maybe shipping more SDKs that make this even more simple. So with we have React Native Lens UI Kit. It's something that I built. It's for building mobile apps on Lens. You can import these components, like I mentioned earlier, like a list of profiles or a feed or a profile details view and things like that, in as little as 2 lines of code. Or you can use our React hooks library, which is something like how WAGMI hooks became like really popular last year because they were really simple to use. That's kind of what we built, but for Lens API calls. So instead of having to kind of like write out the GraphQL query and understand GraphQL, you can, in 2 lines or so of code, kind of get that information from the API. So yeah, the three main things I would consider would be looking at the GraphQL API in our docs, looking at the React Native Lens UI Kit SDK, and then also looking at the React Hooks SDK.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. So I had kind of some questions for you when I was reading through the documentation. I think using Lens, like you mentioned, there's a few entry points. The API, which is really easy to use. I didn't play around with your mobile SDK because I'm not a mobile developer, but eventually, right? And then the last piece, actually, at the bottom, there was this thing called modules. Which I guess are actually playing around with the smart contracts themselves. Can you explain kind of the use cases for when you do each one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I think like just getting started, you would just query, to kind of build out the views and kind of get familiar with the API. And then for like intermediate to more advanced developers that are building out their app, you can have these configurable modules that are for following and collecting, are kind of like the two main use cases. And for the, let's say for instance, maybe the follow module, you have really full control over who can follow another person by the logic that you put into that module. And you can give the user the option to kind of opt in or opt out to any of these features. So you might say by default, anyone can follow anyone. And then you might have this settings checkbox in the profile that has these module configurations that you define as a developer. So you can say, maybe we only want to allow people that have, I don't know, this NFT in their wallet to be able to follow me. Or maybe they must have purchased an NFT from me in the past in order to follow me. Or maybe if they're following this other person who I dislike, they cannot follow me at all. Or maybe they need to pay me like $10 in order to follow me. Anything on chain can be configured in that follow module. So it's really up to the developer and the user to kind of opt in. So, you could consider most of the time people don't even like really opt into the follow modules, because I just want as many people to follow me as possible. But there are a lot of people that are opting into these different configurations, and they can be as robust and I would say diverse as you can think of, or they can be really simple.
Yeah.
And then for collect modules, like if you send out a publication, you can configure like what people can do and what they can't do to collect. So you might say only 100 people can collect this post, or maybe this post costs $2 to collect. That's how that person, raised the $20,000 I'd mentioned. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff you can do there. Same thing, anything on chain, it's fair game.
That's nice. I love how there's, like, a lot of, I guess you could say, customizability. But, we have, like, 20 minutes left, so I'm just gonna jump into the building portion. Feel free to, like, hang around if you wanna watch me struggle. If you don't, everyone has their own time. But anyways, I'm gonna share my screen really fast. So basically what
I'm
I
excited to
did.
see this.
Oh, no, I'm like, it's Okay, I'm gonna be honest, it's pretty bare bones. What I essentially did was, 2 things. So, I'm gonna do this really quick, truffle unbox. So, currently it's under my personal GitHub, um, lens box, let's just call it lens demo. So what I've done here with this box is basically condense, I copy pasted your quick starts and then also converted over your contracts into a truffle box. So I don't know, it's called demo. Cool. So to just kind of talk over the contents of this, like when you're building a Lens app, I guess you can either choose to do something purely like no smart contracts at all, in which case you would just delete this and then I would cry. You could delete this folder and not build anything. Um, but if you did wanna do something more creative with, like, the modules and the smart contracts, the truffle thing is here. I migrated basically all of the contracts, which were originally, I think, written in Hardhat, though, to my understanding, you guys are actually testing in Foundry right now, which is pretty cool. But anyways, that's all there. For those of you who are, like, smart contract noobs, by the way, just having access to these contracts is insane because they are so intense, like, I'll show you later. We'll talk about like Solidity compilers and optimizations and all the things that like Lens has to do to make this really complex protocol be able to even get on chain. Um, Anyway, so you have your truffle section for if you want to actually edit the modules. I'm going to dive into the Lens app right here. So just to kind of show you how easy it is to use, the quick start basically sets you up on a Next.js app using GraphQL and Apollo client. I'm just going to go ahead and install the dependencies. The main things that you need to think about are just, well, actually, let me show you what it looks like, and then we'll dive into the code of how this actually works, right? So if I just do an npm run dev, and then I go here, localhost. So there's an auth flow. So right now this is through MetaMask, but to my understanding, Natter, you said the upcoming is going to be something that you don't even need a wallet for. So you're just basically putting me out of business. Is this what we're hearing?
No, I mean, it'll give someone that option, but obviously under the hood, there's still going to be some wallet stuff happening.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And then so this, I guess the way it was structured was grabbing like the most popular profiles and then you can get in and then get more information about here. Lens has all of these posts. So to actually look at how this code is structured, it's a few things. So the first thing being everything's again at that API client level. All you need to do is connect using Apollo client. If you want to do I guess anything that requires like writing, so like creating a post or mirroring a post is going to require authorization token, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Right. Okay. So that's the intention here. Basically, when you create this auth link, you can pass in the token to do creating things. None of this starter box actually has an example of posting. This is all querying, but very simple. Just construct your GraphQL queries. And then when you go over into pages, right here, and so this was just me copying, pasting all the quick start and consolidating it. You have two parts to it. So if we look at actually the way the page was structured, if you remember in the flow, it started off with we weren't authenticated. So it's just a connect and then a login. And then once that token is there, displaying that all of that information. And again, super simple just to do all of that. You can see right here is doing where's the auth thing? Where did I put it? I don't remember. But anyways, oh, as you can see right here, it's just calling it. Where's the client? Where did I put it? Here, query,
Yeah, right there.
client.query.
Find that query.
I'm like, okay. Yeah, and that's kind of it. I guess the avatars are hosted on, I guess your example one is, like, through an Infura IPFS gateway, so shout out again to my homies at Consensus Fam. But, yeah, that was a really brief kind of talk over everything, but I think that just goes to show how easy it is to use. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to expand upon, Natter. Um
No, that's great. I mean, I think that one of the things that I've noticed is that, you know, it's one thing to kind of hear about something, and then it's another thing to actually use it and build something with it, even if it's like a really tiny hello world. But typically, what ends up happening is that when someone kind of uses the Lens APIs and they kind of just do exactly what you're doing here, they get pretty excited about the possibilities of what they can do, and then they start diving a lot further. And a lot of applications have literally come out of these guides. Like, um, in fact, like two of the most popular mobile apps in the entire Lens ecosystem kind of came out of our uh, tutorials or videos or quick start guides, along with a bunch of other stuff, because someone went in and they were like building out their example application just to learn. And then they just start adding new features. And then at some point they realize, oh, this is a real app. Like people want to use this. So I'm going to ship this to the app store. And that's it. That's how a lot of companies, get started. Someone's playing around with this idea and they put it out to the world, and you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the really exciting part about, like, especially for those of you building a company, like, data and user acquisition's probably the hardest component to it and, paying for people to come onto your app, but, like, with Lens, that's there, so if you're a straight dev, all you need to care about is that user experience, is, like, building that app, so that's really exciting. I do wanna actually touch on, I didn't go into the truffle section. Um, if you do wanna do kind of more, what do you call it? Complex stuff, so adding in that, customizability, you would get into the truffle folder. So I need to do an install. So to kind of give a lay of the land here, we have all of our lens contracts provided by you guys. They're very long and very complex. Things that I guess when I was converting that I noticed that I wanted to call out for people who aren't used to building Web3 is if we go into the migrations. So this is actually, I guess, migrating it all into the blockchain, you'll notice that, specifically, where is it? Lens Hub. No, that's the wrong one. Lens Hub is, or let me look for a link. Right. So Lens Hub is a huge file, which to my understanding, I think also looking at the GitHub history, you guys have had to take code out and then migrate it into libraries to make this compile. So if you're writing your own smart contracts, you cannot migrate a smart contract that is bigger than 24.77 kilobytes. Um,
Wow, I
for
didn't know that.
example, when yeah, yeah, yeah. So, one thing to do, and I think actually Hardhat might have this built in, um, which is why I had trouble, compiling this when I was first doing it, is one of the settings you can do is a optimizer. So, basically, when you are deploying, okay, so when you're interacting with smart contracts, right, there's the deployment part, which is going to just be putting that on chain and then actually interacting with that. The optimizer comes in during the deployment part. So it's basically doing some fun stuff to your opcodes, but there are trade-offs that I want to mention. Um, Specifically, let me find my notes because this is kind of more complex. Um, Yeah, so basically, overall, I think you could say the optimizer tries to simplify complicated expressions, which will reduce like the code size and execution cost. But it is a trade. What do you call it? A trade-off. So basically, how do I explain this? Let me start over. So, hmm. I'm struggling. Okay, let me start. So part 1 and part 2, right? So there's deployment and code execution. If I had not done the optimization and compiled the code, the bytecode for that specific like Lens Hub contract is like 40 kilobytes. It's huge,
Mm,
right? Um, so when I do run the optimizer, it basically like shortens the opcodes. So that it put it, I think, like, under 24. The trade-off, though, then is the code execution cost is more expensive, because I guess it's been shortened.
mm.
Um, So the thing that I guess what you care about here is you'll notice this thing called runs. So runs is basically telling the Solidity optimizer how do I feel about that trade-off. A parameter of 1 will produce like very short but expensive code. But on the other hand, a larger run will produce like very long but more gas efficient code. So that's kind of what you need to tweak around with regards to the deployment. Um, so I could show you basically how to what it looks like if I have this on versus off. So I'm going to start off with Ganache, and I'm going to fork mainnet. So this is just 0 config forking. Oh, I already have it running somewhere. Let me change the port.
And one of the things I want to mention that for people watching around actually deploying the protocol itself is that I would say really one of the main use cases, and it's something that people do really often. So this is very valuable and helpful to have this all kind of configured for you. Is that typically if you want to deploy one of those modules that she was speaking of earlier, you need to kind of test that to make sure it works and all that. So you typically need to be running the entire protocol locally. So this is a really great, that's a really great reason to do this. If you want to build out or test out one of your own custom modules, you'll need to be able to run it locally.
Right. So I'm going to comment this out. And if I do a truffle migrate, it'll take some time to compile because there's a lot. And then it should fail. Right, because basically, um oh, yeah. So basically the bytecode is too big, to be deployed. So if I uncomment this and then I compiled it, so I have to recompile it. So I'm gonna delete this build contract right here. Um, and fingers crossed. Oh, I hate doing this live. It'll pass. It'll pass. Come on. um, it should work. Well, actually, okay, so while we're waiting for this to compile and run, I actually do want to demonstrate how to create a custom module. So in your demo, or sorry, in your documentation, you guys do kind of an arbitrary thing called secret code follow. Um, so basically, the way that you guys set it up was an example where the you were only allowed to follow someone if you had a what do you call it? Special
Special,
special
like a number or
passcode.
something like, yeah, password or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this while this is compiling. Man, I freaking jinxed myself. Something happened. Um,
it happens all every time anyone does any live demo. You've done great though
yeah.
so far.
Cool. So, basically, what the modules do is you can basically extend it and then hook into certain things. Oh, look, it compiled. Haha. Nice. Okay.
There
Sorry.
we go.
You you can hook into things and then it'll run the correct logic, I guess. So basically you would call like a lens hub follow and then basically you've created a custom follow module and then it'll flow through into yours. So the first thing we're going to do in order to do that is going to be let's create a module here. I'm going to create a new file called secret code follow module.sol. And I'm just going to copy paste this code. I'm not going to explain everything in it. I just want to show the process of what it looks like to add a module. So in this specific case, we're overriding the follow module. So we're passing in some basic like interface um, definitions so that I guess Lens knows how to hook into it properly. Um, I'm assuming this is an initialize because Lens works through upgradable contracts. So, oh, that's something to note actually. You guys are using the Open Zeppelin upgradable contract. Um, so if you actually want to interact with it, if you've gone through like vanilla tutorials, you just use the deployed contract address. But to bring it in full circle, if you guys remember when we were talking to Open Zeppelin, we have to interact with a proxy address the entire time. So the transparent upgradable proxy is actually the address that we're interacting with. So Lens Hub needs to reference that proxy address. You can't just deploy Lens Hub because it's not going to be the correct implementation contract in case that gets switched out. But anyways, to circle back here, so that's probably the initialize part. If you guys remember the difference between initialize and constructor. Process follow is what we're overriding. And then to my understanding here, we're actually not overriding this at all, but we need to have it. So it's just an empty file function. But this is the logic here, essentially. Pass in the passcode, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does work, then you are followed. So now that we've
This is awesome.
added this, yeah,
That
so
you're
now
doing
that
this.
we've okay, thank you. I feel like this is actually the hardest part.
It is.
Your API is super easy to use. Like, I was like, I don't need to explain this at all. Like, Natter can use it or explain this. This is like my wheelhouse. So anyway, so now we have this new contract. Let's actually talk about we have to deploy it now, right? So we go back into migrations. So I'm going to create a new migrations file let's call this deploy secret follow.js. Cool. So in order to do this, I'm just also going to copy paste some code right here. Things to note basically is we are getting our contract artifacts so that we can create our abstractions to interact with. Um, Oh, I didn't mention this. I should have just stepped through the migrations file actually. When we are interacting with the proxy, we need to use our governance address because that's what basically is like whitelisting us to allow us to interact with it. If you look through here, uh, where is it? We deployed using the first account, or the deployer address is the first account, governance address is the second account, treasury is the third, etc. So, anyways, we need to keep track of that. So that's the governance address. To get the proxy, the transparent upload proxy is just the most recently deployed. You can change this to @ if you had a proxy you had deployed before and you want to use. Anyways, to get the actual Lens Hub abstraction, then you just do a Lens Hub at that address. And the last piece then is we actually deploy it. So we're deploying the module, so that contract. And the module, I believe, takes in what do you call it? Uh, Profile, no. Oh, it takes in an address, right? It takes in the address of the hub. So that's passed in here. And then the last piece then is when you add in modules, you need to whitelist them so that Lens knows that they can use them. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's the point.
Yeah, so,
Right.
like, on testnet, you
And
don't
if
have to get them whitelisted, but in production, you do, yep.
yeah, cool. And then if you note to actually call this function, again, because we are calling the proxy contract, we have to call it from that governance address. To do that, you just pass it in as a parameter. So that's going to modify your message.sender. So last piece is actually deploy it. If you call a truffle migrate, it will go from 1 to 3 or like however long it goes. We don't want to redeploy and spend all of that money again. Granted, this is all locally, so it doesn't matter. But you can say from 2. And then as you add more, you can say 3 or 4, or if you want to specifically, whoops, I have the wrong, did I change this? So I brought it up on no, dang it, what happened? Compilation failed. Where is this? Module, follow validator module base not found. Okay, wait, let's arbitrarily try to compile it again. No. Import secret follow code follow module sold. Did I spell everything correctly?
That's
You know,
spelling's
I
not
don't
always
want
right.
yeah, okay, whatever. I have a working demo. Just gonna pretend like I debugged this and figured out what I had done
You're smart.
wrong.
This is the right thing to do. Just have it
Yeah.
ready.
Uh, Let me see. Okay, cool. So, haha, pretend I fixed everything. And I called deploy. So that basically, if you noticed here, I did it before, is a from to. Um, I don't know if you'd ever be doing this with a Lens app, but if you wanted to do like multi-chain network deployment, this is how you do it. Like this would be your Optimism and this would be your Polygon, and then you would tell them which network for each migration. But that's just fun facts. We're here, secret code follow module. To actually use this, uh, basically you can run truffle scripts to write like basically interactions with the contracts. In the truffle box, I had already basically included all of the example scripts. So that's just going to be a script for how to collect a profile, create a profile, follow a profile, etc. There's a helper file here that just basically does a few things. So it identifies protocol state. So that's just the enum. You can't actually interact with the Lens protocol unless it's unpaused. Um, I don't actually. If you could give some insight into the like intention behind protocol state, um, that would be helpful. I just know it exists as a concept. Um, oh, did uh, are you still on?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, cool. I was gonna ask if you had some insight into like unpaused and paused, or like the I guess, why the developers chose to include protocol state.
Um, I don't actually have a ton of insight there. I mean, I guess just in case something, catastrophic was found and they needed to just be 100%, have control over it or something like that. That's what I'm guessing. But
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't. We never really kind of discussed that. Myself as someone that's not on the engineering team, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, awesome. No, but that makes a lot of sense. So anyways, to that point, if you wanna interact with the protocol that you brought up locally, you cannot do it unless you unpause it. Um, But I guess diving into the actual secret follow. So this is a script that essentially does the full thing, right? So the deployment whitelisted this module to be used. The next thing that you can see from here is basically the things we care about are it sets the state. And again, like I mentioned, we care about two things. We're always interacting with the proxy. So if you actually go to this first one right here, first migration, it logs or like writes all of these addresses to a file right here. So that's something to note. That's where we get this. You unpause it. We are calling it from that governance address as our sender. We have to whitelist the profile creator because if you, I guess, this address is not allowed to, then we can. I left this commented out. You would actually need to comment this in. There's two things you need to note. If you're following the documentation tutorial and you like run through all of these example scripts, not the secret follow, create profile actually creates the same profile. So if you are in secret follow and you run this as well, this is going to fail since it's already been minted. Um, so I have already minted this, so I'm going to comment this out. And then the last thing here is going to be setting the follow module. So this is basically telling Lens which like custom module to use. This is going to be the address of our secret follow module that we just deployed. Um, and then this is also in the example documentation. You guys give two examples, one passing in the incorrect um, data. And so I guess the incorrect code is 1337, and the correct code right here is 42069. Um, so if I run this, hopefully script slash secret follow, nope, something happened. Owner query for non-existent token. Where did this fail? Secret follow 3619. Um,
Token ID
you
is
know,
supposed to be 0.
is token ID supposed to be 0? I think in your documentation, you specifically say we can never have an ID token 0.
Oh, okay, I wasn't
Uh,
sure if this. profile was like the first one minted and it was counting from 0 or something like that.
Maybe owner query for non-existent. I mean, per did I even mint it? Oh, I commented out the minting code.
Okay.
Whoops. Yeah, that's
Okay.
we're just minting something that doesn't exist. Um, let me find this.
Is that create
Uh,
profile that you meant that you commented out right there? That's that's it, maybe?
create profile. Oh, it's because it never minted a profile. Okay, yeah, so truffle. Maybe I haven't. Did I do a fresh reinstall? Okay, let me make sure the follow address is correct. Oh, no, that's different. Okay. Now it should work. Nope. Gosh darn it. What did I do wrong? I feel bad. You know what? This is actually a great opportunity to demonstrate the truffle debugger. I haven't
Here we
actually
go.
gotten, but I probably won't solve it within the time since we're already over time. But which one was the one following? 33 is the one that failed. Oh, create profile. So this is actually it probably already created. So some things to note: to use the truffle debugger, you just do the truffle debug and then the transaction hash. On a reverted transaction, what happens actually is I think Ganache does an ETH like get calculate gas or something, and it notices that it reverts, so it actually never spits out the gas. In order to get the transaction hash, you can run it again and pass in a actual gas, so then we don't estimate it. And so if I run it again, I think it should. Dang it! Oh, this sucks. Wait, what is this the wrong one? Could not decode secret follow 3399 from user. I'm just gonna uncomment. Everything's going wrong.
It's
I
okay.
don't think it's that. Um, oh, okay, cool.
Okay.
Something else failed. Transaction error. So let's just go ahead and do a truffle debug. And so this is nice because you can do console logs everywhere, but then you'd have to redeploy your contract all the time, which is really annoying.
Mhm.
Um, so this debugger should just be able to get into it. And it also takes time because it has to compile the multitudes of contracts that we
Yeah.
have. So that's the only thing that's a little annoying. What? We are waiting. Okay, I'm gonna guess that it failed because of this. I don't know what happened before with the creator profile, but because it failed with the transaction hash, I'm thinking it's just demonstrating that it actually failed in your try catch, which is why this looks pretty because it
Mhm.
still went on. So let's find that thing. So it's probably failing here. So that is line 30. And we're gonna wait. I don't know if we should talk about something right now. Do you have alpha? Oh, okay,
Uh,
cool. Now when you're about to tell me your secrets.
oh, it looks like it's compiled, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is like the watch pot never boils kind of problem. Um, uh, yeah. If I ask you for alpha again, will it move?
I know, right? I mean, oh, there we go. I
Oh,
was about to talk
yeah.
about alpha.
Yeah, wow, actually. Okay, so cool. I'm assuming it's this guy right here. So I don't want to. Okay, well, there's a few things. So just to demonstrate, you can hit next. If I didn't know what was going on, I would just keep hitting until I get into the implementation contract.
Mhm.
That's the annoying thing, I guess, about debugging proxies. But since I have a good idea of where it is, I'm just gonna go to line
Oh,
30,
cool.
and then
Is C like continue or something?
yeah, C will continue. Cool. And I'm just gonna keep going. And then if I do a V, okay, I think it didn't properly decode. Yep, cool. So you can see I got to here. Passcode is 1337, which is I believe, the incorrect. And that's why it failed. Yep.
Cool.
And then you can keep going. And then you'll notice actually the way proxies work is if it fails, it returns 0. And that's demonstrated here. Um, yeah. Why there was a failure before that, I don't know. But we're just going to pretend like it never happened. And this one worked properly. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say about the follow module stuff. I guess one extra Easter egg, I didn't do this because this actually takes a little bit longer, but you can debug transactions through the um, Visual Studio as well if you wanted, and it would step through all of that. But with the amount of lens contracts, I recommend the CLI. Also, if you're using hard hat contracts, you can only use the CLI for now. Um, so that would just be a truffle debug, and then your thing. Cool. We are over time. I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add or say, or how to reach you, how to get on Lens, how to build on Lens. Those are a lot of questions all at the same time.
Yeah, I'm natter.lens on Lens. I'm dabbit3 on Twitter. If you're a developer and you want to have a Lens profile, like reach out to me on any social network and just give me a quick introduction to yourself, and I can get you allow listed. And yeah, this was really great. I would love to know where people can find actually the thing that you were just working on, so they can play around with it. And when I say B, I'm
Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
me too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a truffle unbox here. I'll put the code,
So you can just
or
run
I'll
this
send you.
like project.
Yeah.
You can like declone this project essentially like through truffle command line.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, nice.
Um, and then here I'll do this. I'm writing out. Oh, did I? Oh, here we go. Nice, cool. So that was the
Okay.
command I called. Usually each of these streams are paired with a walkthrough of everything I built. But I usually have the stream first and then the walkthrough comes out because I'm not great at timing things. But a guide should come out shortly. I would say by the end of this week or early next week. But if
Ooh,
someone wants to get started right away, this
that
is
would be
here.
dope.
If you want an actual step by step.
Is the
Huh?
guide gonna include the custom modules?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah, of
cool.
course. Yeah. I mean, I have to represent Truffle. I'm here for smart contract development for sure.
Well, that's great.
Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna
yeah.
definitely be sending people that way.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you have a good Thursday and rest of the week. I will see you at ETH Denver. Yes?
Yes,
Oh, I
yes,
also
I'll
am
be there. I
wearing
see the
my
DevCon
Aave,
shirt. Yeah,
DevCon
represent.
shirt if
I love
notice.
those
So
shirts.
I'm excited for your swag.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm actually wearing a little bit of Lens swag myself. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the Lens Garden. So
Yes, okay, cool. Nice. I think I also have that one, so we
nice.
sh we should have coordinated. But yeah, okay, cool. I'll send you the secret follow module guide, later, and it was great having you. I
Thank you
hope
so
you have a
much for
great
having me,
rest of the
Emily.
day.
This was great. Yeah, good job. Good work on all this stuff.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
See ya.
bye.